Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is the power of symbol. We say that a picture is worth 1,000 words. And if that's true, then a symbol is worth 1,000,000 to convey all kinds of powerful transformation through our internal associations. So it's going to be a fun conversation. But before we get started, let's take a minute or two to get present. So good morning, Rosalind. Welcome. It's great to have you here along with everybody else who's joining us. And before we get started with our conversation today, let's take a minute or two to get present. So let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through the nose and hold it. This time, imagine brilliant, bright light lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your cells, all your molecules, all your electrons, creating a brilliant beam of light and energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's press our palms together. Vigorously rub your hands together and feel the friction, the temperature, the motion, the pressure, the tickling and tingling when you stop, and allow all those sensations to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Welcome, 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 and good morning, good evening, Gia. Welcome. It's so good to have you joining us. And today we're talking about the power of symbol. So we do know that a picture is worth 1,000 words. When we have symbolic representations of things, that takes us into a whole other dimension and realm of capability when it comes to grasping something or making associations between these symbols and what we allow them to represent. And so this conversation's coming from the work that I do, the core connection work, where we tap into the power of the other than conscious intelligence. I say other than conscious rather than unconscious, because there is such a deep well of wisdom and knowledge and awareness in our other than conscious that unconscious just seems like a diminutive term. And I didn't really want to, I don't want to minimize the power of this other than conscious awareness. So what happens in this work is that I'll say, we'll decide, the client and I will decide what we're going to work on. And then I'll say, so what's the first thing that pops into your head? And many times it is something utterly random. And then we follow it through to just discover what occurs with that symbol. So most recently, I was working with someone, and what was going on with them is that they were feeling, I don't think that they made this association, but I did, but they were feeling deprived of a certain vitality, enjoyment in life. And the first thing that popped into their head was French fries, salty French fries, which they love. And I think I mentioned this the other day, in a little French fry, paper cardboard French fry container. And they ate a French fry in their mind's eye, and it was just completely delicious. And then they ate a second, and it was completely delicious. And then they started feeling guilty because they had a rule about eating carbs during the week. And they decided in their mind's eye that they had enough French fries, and they got to put it away for later, or give it away, or throw it out. But they had enough French fries. And it was remarkable because they recognized it, they made the association. So this was a symbolic representation of whatever the complexities were that were going on for them under the surface. And their love of French fries, and their commitments to themselves, all of these things were represented in this symbolic story, right? And so what happened was, on another than conscious level, they associated this enactment with the French fries to the emotional state that they were in, relating to feeling deprived. And then they transformed that to experiencing satisfaction, which is pretty awesome, and kind of wacky that something that simple can make such a difference. Another example with another client was they were feeling kind of unappreciated and feeling overburdened by doing things for other people all the time, and not even being recognized for it. And what showed up in their session was a bowl of cereal with milk getting soggy on the counter, on a kitchen counter. And that what showed up for them was their compulsion to put the bowl away. That here, somebody left this bowl on the counter, and now I have to put it away. And in the scenario in their head, they didn't. They left the bowl on the counter. And what happened internally was that they allowed themselves to not have to do everything for everybody, that they could leave it to others to take care of their own mess, kind of thing. And so it was just a very elegant, these symbols are so elegant. And what I mean by that is that they're streamlined, like they accomplish what needs to be accomplished. They communicate what needs to be communicated in a very simple and direct fashion, or simple and indirect, perhaps, fashion, where, because of the emotional experience and because we had set a framework for what we were going to be working on, this symbol spoke to that. It was generated from their other than conscious mind to say, here's a scenario that has all the pieces. And what happened was, it allowed the person to make a choice internally, emotionally, that they wouldn't necessarily make if it was somebody, if it was something more complex, if it was actually talking about the specifics of life's scenarios. What happened was, it allowed new synapses to be created and generated, and associations that ended up shifting emotion and behavior. and belief shifts this way too. It's just really quite remarkable. So I have so many stories there. It's really quite remarkable the way we can see that our minds work. And so just to that conversation, this isn't particularly symbolic, but I have another client who was talking of, and this part of the conversation right now is about making connections, because these symbols are allowing us to make these connections on an other than conscious level that then impact our emotion and our feelings, our perspective, our attitude, our behaviors. It's amazing and wonderful to me. So and I see these associations pretty quickly, because I've been doing this for so long. And I see how these things work. But anyway, yesterday I was working with a client who has had a history of anxiety, like crippling anxiety. And recently they've taken up writing. They have a very, very rich imagination. And they have taken up writing these stories that they're creating in their mind. And recently, well, they came to the session saying that they were having all this anxiety again. And I asked if they were writing. And they said, no, they hadn't been writing. I said, well, you know, when you write, you feel better and you don't seem to have this anxiety. And they said, well, it's really, really hard for me to understand what the connection would be between writing and having this anxiety. And it was so obvious to me, the direct connection. It was that they have a very, very active mind. And if that mind isn't fed, it's like if you don't play with a pet or you don't play with a kid, they're going to get into mischief, right? And so it was so clear to me, oh, well, you know, if you engage your mind in something that is life affirming and creative, it's going to get the expression that it needs, and it won't have to be torturing you with creating these horrible scenarios that then result in anxiety. And they said they didn't see the connection. Now, to me, it was so vivid. It was so clear what the connection was, yet they couldn't recognize the connection. So we started talking about exercise, and this person exercises routinely, the importance of exercise for good health. And they said, absolutely, it's direct connection. I said, well, this is a matter of exercising your brain. And that was enough to allow them to make the association. The idea was to have them recognize the significance of this creative act in their mental health, their mental well-being. And it's interesting because they can literally exercise their demons in this creative expression, rather than having the demons be torturing them. So making connections, that's what we're talking about in relation to this person. So I'm just trying to think of some other wonderful, wonderful session symbols that showed up. I was working with someone who was in a very deep depression and just feeling like the end of the world kind of thing. And the image that came up was this shipwreck, you know, that was this sunken ship, and it was just on the bottom of the ocean, and it was rotting and just destroyed. And as they were being present to this shipwreck, what happened is that the ship started kind of regenerating itself under the water. And eventually it rose to the surface and was sailing off into the distance. And think of that symbol. Here's someone who just was devastated. And at the end, they felt like they could weather the journey. Yeah, that they were actually in motion. They were above water rather than feeling like a shipwreck. They were above water and they were sailing into new horizons. So that kind of symbology it's remarkable. It works on such a deep, deep, deep level. And there are times in our lives where we see symbols. So there was a time when I was driving and I was talking to somebody about some kind of new awareness or new potential, something. And I was driving and there was an eagle that flew like very, very close to the front of my car, low, flew above my car, like right coming toward me, this eagle. And we can, I saw that as a symbol. I saw that as a wink from the universe to say that I was on the right path. I know I've said this before, but I had a friend a long time ago who used to say everything is symbolic and nothing is symbolic. An eagle is an eagle is an eagle. And maybe an eagle is a symbol of freedom and strength and courage and a new future, symbols. And so there was another client where what came up, they were in a relationship and they, I guess their partner had cheated on them at one point, and they just couldn't find forgiveness, that they just couldn't connect emotionally in the depth that they wanted to. And what showed up for them was popcorn. And this popcorn was 5 kernels of popcorn on the bedspread. And I don't even remember all the details, but at the end of the session, they felt very much in love with their partner. So the symbols that they created, I think that session also had cotton candy in it, which is so funny, the sweetness of cotton candy. Anyway, I don't know exactly what the internal connections were for them, but the symbols spoke to them on an other than conscious level to affect a rather profound shift in emotion and perspective. So we are, as human beings, meaning-making machines. And these symbols allow us a depth of presence that we don't always have accessible to us when we're trying to reason things out. And the beauty and power of symbols is that they allow us to go beyond reason. That we believe we're reasonable and rational creatures. I'm not so sure that that's entirely true. And good morning, Robin, welcome. It's so great to have you here with us. We're talking about the power of symbol. And I was just saying, we think that we're rational beings and that we're reasonable. And I can tell you in my experience doing the work that I do with people that it is some of the worst decisions are the decisions that we make just with our minds, without the engagement of our heart and soul. Where we make decisions based on something looking good on paper, even though we might have had a gut feeling that this is not the way to go. And if we look at the state of the world, so much of that is a result of people making quote unquote rational decisions, logical decisions that end up being very disconnected from the bigger picture, from recognizing the implications, these decisions being heartless, without heart, without the engagement of that level of love and connection. And I also see people making gut decisions and then justifying. And I have had conversations with people that are justifying one thing and then something happens and they are the same person justifying the polar opposite. And it's not a rational decision. You know, they're rationalizing their decision, but it's not rational. And the power of symbol is to be able to transcend the rational, to penetrate beyond that to a fuller sense of presence and awareness, a fuller consciousness than our seemingly rational approaches. So I'm just trying to, I mean, when we think about the Statue of Liberty as a symbol, there are all kinds of associations with that, right? And if we had an image of the Statue of Liberty bailing out a boat that was about to sink, that would have meaning, different meaning probably for each of us, but it's a super powerful symbol. And it connects with us, just like images do, pictures, connects with us on a level that is deeper. It's a non-linear level. Let's talk about that. So it's more of a holistic perception that symbols speak to, that images speak to, because there's so much information that we're receiving. And we can look at the power of symbol by looking at religious iconography. You know, we have the symbol of the cross, we have the symbol of the Star of David, we have all these different symbols, the flower of life, that carry meaning or that convey meaning. And then when we take those symbols and we put them into different contexts, it goes way beyond the image itself to create a whole zeitgeist, a whole experiential communication that linear language doesn't necessarily approach. So poetry also works in the realm of symbol, where we can be moved by a certain representation of something that forces or encourages new associations where we might have words put together that don't normally go together, that then creates some activity in our minds that is outside of the linear convention. And that then moves us to a new understanding. So we've talked about the power of story and how we are in an era which is, I guess there in any era, there's a need to create new paradigms, but the power of story can transform a culture, can transform a society. The power of symbols contributes to the power of story. And how we recognize those symbols allows us to move into new ways of thinking, new ways of being. And I'm just thinking now of news and the things that we see on the news, we hear on the news. That's all part of story. Let's see. Gia says, how can we learn the power of symbols, how to recognize them? Please help. Well, so again, Gia, everything is symbolic and nothing is symbolic. And symbols emerge from our own awareness. For instance, in the context of the core connection work, some people have symbols, or so another symbol that's shown up for a couple people is a door in the floor. A door in the floor, and sometimes that door doesn't have a handle even. And so what's the floor? The floor is the depths underneath the surface. What's under the surface? And here's a door. It's like a passageway to say, hey, there's something down there, but there's no handle, so I can't even open the door. You know, or an open door, an open window it's a symbol. If it's in our imagination and we're in a room and there's no windows, that's also a representation. It's a symbol. It's like, well, what does that represent? Obviously that you're locked in this closed space. You know, all of a sudden a window appears. Oh, I can start to see out. And then maybe that window opens. Maybe a door shows up. These are all symbols that are allowing our minds then to move from this place, for example, in those examples of a place of stuckness into some transformation, into opening new possibility. So symbols are everywhere and nowhere, right? You might see a butterfly, that can be a symbol. You know, what is a butterfly to you? It's maybe a symbol of freedom. It's maybe a symbol of joy or love, or who knows what it is. But if you can allow yourself to engage with the symbols that life presents to us, there's communication happening on all different levels. And that's where magic and wonder comes into play. You know, for me anyway, there's always an opportunity for wonder and curiosity and recognizing the magic. So it is interesting. Gia says it sounds so interesting. It is. It's fun. It's fun to be paying attention in a different way, to go beyond what we consider rationality, you know, to recognize that there is a depth in our dreams, the things that there are symbols that arise in our dreams, you know, like there are messages underneath that we can discern. So anyway, that's it for this morning. Thank you so much for being with me. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on the Enlightened World Network Facebook page and YouTube channel at 9 a.m. Eastern. And I invite you to check out the other awesome programming on Enlightened World Network and Enlightened World Living. And I'm so grateful to you for the opportunity to share these conversations and to explore together new ways of thinking, new ways of being. And until next time, so much.